Howdy, and welcome to Risky Standard, an actual play podcast featuring a rowdy group of best friends playing tabletop role-playing games together. I'm your host and GM, Mitch Broesder. You can find me on Twitter at MagnesiumB, and you can find the show on Twitter at Standard Risky. With me today, I've got Peter Loftus.
Hey, I'm Pete. I'm also on Twitter at Chip Enjoyer.
Malcolm Hall.
What's up, God lovers? Happy Mardi Gras. That's it.
And we got Timothy Mans as well.
Hi, guys. Good to be back here with all my fellow players and with you, the listeners at home. You can head on over to twitter.com and find me at Axe Hoarder. Axe Hoarder. There might be an underscore. I don't know.
Refer to our previous episodes or the show notes. Today we are returning to our ongoing campaign of Beam Saber by Austin Ramsey. As always, you can find Beam Saber over at Austin's itch.io page, along with a few of his other games and some cool supplements for Beam Saber. We are tuning back in today after our first downtime session. So when we last met the Black Star Constellation, our squad had been recovering in the aftermath of that first mission to varying degrees of success, as I remember it. Can we do like a quick just harm and stress check here? I'm just kind of curious what the state of things is going into this next mission.
Yeah, I was just looking at this too, and as it turns out, I'm more fucked up than I remembered. So,
damn.
I have 2 stress, and I have the level 2 damage slashed, which gives me 1 negative D forward.
You thought you were fucked up. I'm worse. I'll tell you that much. I got 3 stress and have the level 2 harm of perforated.
Oh, you still have perforated. Yeah.
Yeah.
4 stress, no harm.
4 stress, no harm. Classic. And so, yeah, the way that -1 dice works, just so we can get ahead of it here before we get into the dice rolling, that doesn't apply to every single roll that you make, but really is more about like rolls that would be fictionally impacted by the injury that you have. You both have pretty physical, straightforward injuries, like slashed and perforated are both, going to impact some of the physical actions that you might take, doing things like struggle or prowl, or maybe even finesse. Whereas like a survey or a study or an engineer, that might not kind of eat that -1 dice. And similarly, vehicle actions are probably not going to be affected in the same way. Keep it in our minds as we go forward.
It's a positive take.
Yeah, so the crew is, still feeling a little rough generally. I think we're also a little low on supplies. We really burned through our reward from the last mission to kind of get the healing and repair that we managed to get, which I think has left us with no supply points right now.
So we're out here to make some materia.
Yeah, and we closed the last episode with the squad kind of returned to your hidden FOB, your hidden forward operating base, the low tower, this kind of like underground lair beneath a scrapyard in the city of Coronatus. And as you guys had arrived back at your base, your handler Troubadour was already there, and they had told you new mission, and we're heading out of town this time. I think that's where we're going to jump back in today, kind of like right back in the briefing room. We don't have to like drop back in like right on that line, right? Episode opens. We're back around the table. I imagine Troubadour has like kind of laid out these like briefing documents across this. We don't have a name for this big table with the hollow emitters, and I was trying to think of like a pithy one. So if anyone has like a good like tack table, but that's not really good. So if someone has something better than that, let me know.
Feel free to write into the email if you know what to call this table.
Do we have an email?
Yeah, I think we do.
We are dying for fan mail over at riskystandardpod@gmail.com. And I'm putting an asterisk on that because if I got the email wrong, I will go back in later and edit in me saying the correct one, but I'll just match my tone so that you know that I didn't fuck it up.
Premium subscribers get to name one piece of furniture this season.
That's the elite.
That's
Patreon.
how they do it at IKEA.
So you're at the TAC table, patent pending. Troubadour has laid out these briefing documents. You know, they have slotted in a like big data stick into the table that has like caused the emitters to start like whirring up. Initially, we're seeing just like a map of the basin. Generally, kind of just like this big broad map of like all of the territories in the basin. Maybe some kind of color coding here just to kind of indicate like which regions are controlled by which of the three factions. So you got this map of the basin region, and Troubadour begins. Black Star constellation. I think it's fair to say that the outcome of our last operation was mixed. The information that you were able to retrieve was intriguing. I have some very talented people working on gaining access to the data cache that you recovered. There are some amongst my colleagues, though, who are concerned about this unit's ability to operate effectively in the field.
Is that right?
Is it because we screwed up really bad the last time?
That would have something to do with it, yes.
Real easy to say you screwed up when you weren't there.
We all have a job to do here.
Ours just includes getting shot at.
That's what you signed up for, yes. A new opportunity has arisen for us to dispel any doubts about this squad's abilities. As an added bonus, this opportunity will be taking us outside of Coronatus for a while. A chance to let any lingering heat from the freight yard incident die down before we resume any further operations inside the borders of Coronatus. And I think at this point, Troubadour, punches a few things into like the command console on the table, and our map zooms in from this wide view of the basin to kind of like highlight a specific town kind of on the western edge of the map, pretty far to the west of Coronatus, just south of this chain of mountains that kind of forms the northern border of the basin called the Cosmeo Ridge. And Troubadour continues, this is the town of Farron's Bluff. Located in the western reaches of the basin, it's an old town, predating even the Commonwealth's arrival on Imber. Formerly independent, it was captured by the Concordat during the Blitz that marked their arrival, and has been under occupation since. It used to serve as a hub for prospectors and scavengers venturing out into the bleached plains and the outer dust beyond in search of First-Era artifacts. And I think we zoom in like another layer on this map, and we get kind of like a more detailed map of this town in particular, and kind of like the surrounding region. The bluff's most notable feature, and they point to this kind of outcropping of buildings on the northern edge of town, Passerine Station. It's a broadcasting facility with a powerful communications array located near the town. Previously used to expand the basin's burgeoning communications network and provide support to those venturing west into the dust. Since its occupation, the Concordat have repurposed the facility and its equipment to serve as the hub for a propaganda operation run by the Cult of the Lantern. The facility broadcasts across the basin 24/7. Sermons of the faith and messages to the basin's populace aimed at converting them, or at the very least convincing them of the futility of resistance against the ongoing invasion. And I kind of imagine at this point, Troubadour might, I don't know if there's like a radio in this room or if they pull their little data pad from their belt. And I think they click on a radio, and we kind of hear the crackle come on. And this is the voice of someone from this propaganda station. And it's there is a place for all within the faith, within the Concordat, who want to work towards the realization of the grand design, just as so there is a burning blade held above the head of those who would deny the grand reunion, so on and so forth. And they click it off. An odious installation.
What about the people in Farron's Bluff?
Those that resisted? largely gone at this point. Those that have stayed, willingly or not, work to support the Concordat garrison that has since been installed and maintain operations within the town.
What do we care about a bunch of sermons on the radio?
Passerine Station has already been a target in our sights. I'm unhappy to report that their propaganda operation has proven more effective than we would have liked. However, more recently, our scouts have been submitting reports that the Concordat has been assembling troops and sending expeditions into the Bleached Plain. And I think if we look at this map again, you can kind of see that the Concordat controls kind of this northwestern portion of the basin, and the territories that are under ring control are on kind of like the southwestern edge of the basin. And the Bleached Plain kind of like acts as this barrier between those two places. And this is a thing I don't think Troubadour would bother to explain to you because they would expect that you know this already. But the Bleached Plain is this kind of really harsh area of desert that has intruded into the basin. And in addition to just like being a difficult environment to traverse naturally, it is also kind of home to a higher level of fundamental activity than you see elsewhere. Which, amongst other things, makes maintaining communications difficult. Our signals intelligence has confirmed these reports of the Concordat's troops moving into the Bleached Plain. And they lead us to believe that the Concordat are using the array at Passerine Station to boost and maintain their own comms integrity as they move through this fundament-afflicted region of the plain.
Mm-hmm.
It seems quite likely that the Concordat is gearing up to make an offensive on the ring's borders. This is where we come in. During the occupation of Farron's Bluff, the Concordat began construction of a temple to the faith in the town's center. That construction has just completed, and we've received reports from our agents that there will be a consecration ceremony for the temple in the coming weeks.
That sounds bad.
Well, it might be good for us. Attendance at the ceremony is mandatory for the Bluff's residents, including most of the Concordat's military presence inside of Farron's Bluff. For the duration of this ceremony, Passerine Station will be left with just a skeleton crew of operators and security. It's perhaps the most vulnerable the station is going to be at any time in the foreseeable future.
And do we think that they're leaving the best and brightest behind, or?
Attendance at the ceremony is a highly sought-after honor amongst those in service to the Concordat. It is my suspicion that the most eager of its recruits will have made sure to be in attendance. Regardless, I have volunteered our unit to use this unique opportunity to try and disable the comms array at Passerine Station, shutting down the Concordat's broadest-reaching propaganda operation while hindering their ability to effectively coordinate any potential assault on our borders.
Do we have any reason to believe that the Commonwealth might be jumping at the same opportunity?
We don't have any reason to believe so, no. The report about this upcoming ceremony came to us from a ring source inside Farron's Bluff. We don't have any suspicion or knowledge that the Commonwealth has any similar agents operating in the area. Farron's Bluff is far away from the Commonwealth's borders. It's not impossible, but as of this moment, we're working under the assumption that we are the only ones aware that this opportunity is present and with the means to take advantage of it.
Now, wait a minute. The Concordat are like a cancer. They're going to continue to spread. I say let them keep their array. Why don't we just tear out the tumor now? If they're all in one place, why wouldn't we just carpet bomb that damn town?
The civilians there, too.
Collaborators, you mean?
I think you'll find there's a variety of motivations amongst those caught within the Concordat's web. Even if we were inclined to do, as you say, Rhodes, we simply don't have the capability right now. Farron's Bluff is too close to Concordat-controlled territories. If we were to mount any large-scale military operation to try and attack the site, we would almost certainly be found out before arrival and be met with a force well beyond our own ability to overcome. In the same way that the Bleached Plain is one of the few things keeping us safe from them coming down and into the Coldhearth Chaparral, the place that the Ring has made its headquarters, also makes it very difficult for us to strike out at them.
Well, we know we're good at being loud. Just putting it out there.
If you can succeed in this mission, I think it will firmly establish the value of this operation to our critics within the ring. They kind of, I think they've brought like a satchel with them, and they reach into that satchel now and they pull out an object and they put it on the table. And I think it's like wrapped. I think at first it's wrapped just in like, like a rag, right? Like an oil stained cloth. Your primary objective, Black Star Constellation, is to sabotage the comms array at Passerine Station to disable it. I leave the means and the method up to you, but it's important that that station not be functional anytime soon. However, it would be a great waste to not utilize this opportunity to its fullest extent. Your secondary objective, if possible, and this is when they pull the cloth off of the thing that they've put on the table. Your secondary objective is to gain access to the control hub inside Passerine Station and use this device to extract some important comms data from the Concordat's machines before disabling the facility. And I think that the thing that they've got on the table kind of looks like a thin gray railroad spike whose like kind of broader end is wrapped in like the series of black cables that all kind of terminate in different port attachments. And they say, this is a gift from our friend working on the data cache, a device derived from the apparatus itself. Insert it into the main system's control and it will do the rest. It doesn't work instantly though. You'll need time for it to access and retrieve the data we're looking for.
How much time?
Not long. A few minutes. Less if we're lucky. Longer if we're not.
It sounds a lot like a quiet handoff.
The fact that the Concordat are using this station to coordinate their communications amongst their various units opens up a lot of vulnerabilities into their own ciphers, their own code systems, their messaging protocols. It opens up an opportunity in the future for us to intercept more sensitive data.
All right. Sounds simple enough.
And so just a review here, I'm going to run through. Your employer here is the Free Army Council, the Ring's military leadership. Your target is the Cult of the Lantern. It is a Concordat squad that is responsible for like the propaganda operations that the Concordat is conducting on this planet and for converting the local populace generally. Your primary objective, disable the broadcasting array at Passerine Station. Your secondary objective, gain access to the control hub at Passerine and use the apparatus data device to steal important Concordat comms data before disabling the facility. And your rules of engagement this time, no threatening or employing force against the civilian populace of Farron's Bluff, and no firing upon or presenting as a clearly marked medical transport or facility. You can't pretend to be doctors to get there, which I know you're all chomping at the bit to do. I don't know if this is like worth doing. If it's not, we can cut this out. But I think maybe just like zooming out, sort of, we've just talked about the Concordat a lot in this briefing. We haven't really mentioned them since like episode 0. So I think it might be just worth restating exactly who they are and like what's going on there. They are the third faction. They are the only faction we have not seen on screen yet. If we have the Ring, this sort of anarcho-socialist revolution that our squad belongs to, and we have the Commonwealth, who are this like imperialist, capitalist kind of corporatocracy who kind of oversees all of the companies that we dealt with in that last mission. The Concordat is our third faction. They are a theocratic monarchy united under a religious leader called the Hierophant. And they are kind of like the oldest faction in the galaxy. And they're also the one who has like the most access to all of these like first era artifacts and remnants because they believe that they are inheritors to this like fallen civilization that was guided by their deity, who they call the Builder. And they are on a crusade across the galaxy because they think that the Builder is out there and has like left all of these artifacts behind so that they can find him and be reunited with God. And that's like their whole deal, their whole drive, their whole mission is like scouring the entire universe for the clues to find God again, which is maybe why they've come to Ember. That's like a question mark still in the air.
Not in the born again way.
Yeah. And so I think Troubadour might say here, to bring it back into the fiction. Because I think, I don't know if they say this or I'm saying this, like Des and Carta, you've probably had very little meaningful interaction with the Concordat, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think both of your stories really intersect heavily with, like, the Commonwealth and their sort of cruelties and actions, but you've not really... I mean, I guess, correct me if you think you have as a character, but I think probably...
Oh, no. For a man who has had very little contact off of Ember and, has a lot of hate for what he considers everything, but yeah, has very little idea of what everything actually can be out there, you know?
And so I think, I think Troubadour says, Des, Carta, I realize that you have not had the opportunity to deal with the Concordat much, either on the battlefield or otherwise. I just want to tell you not to underestimate them. I've seen a lone, unarmed Concordat thaumaturge take out an entire squad of veteran operatives before. If you can avoid tangling head-to-head with them, all the better. But if you find yourselves in a fight, don't hold back. Use every advantage you can take. This will be a dangerous mission, but I believe in you.
Troubadour is understating the risk here. If this mission fails, death would be a respite. I would, frankly, rather just see this shelled than get us involved here. I understand the importance of this. I'm a bit concerned about our own capability against this Cult of the Lantern, which I'm not particularly familiar with. I have seen some other fringe beliefs within the Concordat which burn with quite a zealous flame.
Are you saying that I should keep an extra bullet just in case?
Maybe.
Wait, we're talking about a bunch of guys on a radio station? How much talking can they do? I mean, just knock them out. A mic's no fucking match for any of the weapons we carry. I mean,
we're all going to be careful this time.
The Concordat, follow what we do. Over.
Troubadour to say, there is a small garrison located just on the edge of the bluff, housing the military units stationed to maintain the occupation. Thankfully, just due to the nature of the construction and layout of the town, the garrison is not located in direct proximity to Passerine Station. It might give you a little bit of breathing room if things get louder than intended.
And what if things get louder than intended? How will we even evac if things go sideways? Looking at the map, Farron's Bluff is what, 100, 200 clicks from any kind of reinforcement or backup?
I think they would be honest with you, right? You're not going to have a lot of support out there. If things get loud and you need to get out, we have the maps. We have our secret routes. We have ways of moving unseen. Use them, but don't get yourself caught in a corner. I assembled this squad because I believe that you can do operations like this. Moving behind enemy lines, striking where you're unexpected, and getting out safely. You have the specialties for it. You have the talents necessary for it. If you don't believe that you three are capable of undertaking this mission, let me know now, and I can confer with my colleagues. We can find someone else to take this on.
I just want to say that I am willing and able to do it.
I'd like a look. It's been a long time.
And I guess I think they kind of motion to like the table with like the data stick that's been driven into it, and then all of these documents that have been laid out on the table. Take your time. We don't need to leave today. Like I said, I think I said before, this ceremony is in the upcoming weeks. There's like a period of travel time to get there. But first, you should see to your affairs in the city, make it whatever excuses you need for your own covers, and then prepare to head out. You'll want a little time to assess the situation firsthand, I assume, before you move in for the strike. It's a short window, just a few hours of ceremony, but I think it's all you'll need. And so, I'm kind of zooming out as a GM here. We are now kind of in the legwork prep phase of this mission. This is a chance to gather information about this mission, kind of like ask questions, scope things out, and kind of start putting the pieces together so that we can come up with what our rough plan will be, so that we can then get to the engagement role and kind of see where we're going to start this mission off at. And so for this one especially, like I said, I think that there's kind of like some gathering information that if you all want to have things in the city that you want to do, like contacts you want to reach out to or whatever, we can kind of do that. Or we can kind of like move forward to like, the squad has made their way through the desert west towards Farron's Bluff and are kind of camped out near there and are maybe doing some like scoping out in person. And I'm also happy to be kind of fluid and moving back and forth between those if like you come up with a good gathering information idea that's back in the city after we've started that part. That could also be asking troubadour questions here if you have more for them. You also have this like dossier of like information they've gathered and like maps of the surrounding areas. And then past that, like I said, if there's like stuff in the city, like I said, I think there's probably a few days of like getting your ducks in a row here before you move on. So does anyone have anything like that jumps to mind first they want to like?
Yeah, I think that Card and not fully, whatever. This their God hour that they're broadcasting. I mean, I really have that much to say about this builder guy, or are they using this for any other type of communication? Are they hiding a message in there? Because that's a lot of time to be talking.
I won't even make you like roll for this one. I think like troubadour just answer directly and say that to the best of our knowledge and study, it doesn't appear that the content of the broadcasts themselves are a means of code or cipher. It is propaganda, and as I said before, somewhat effective propaganda at that. They are offering aid, food, and shelter to those who would align themselves with their cause. As the ring's own supplies have dwindled, as the circle has grown tighter around our territories, it's an offer that has become more and more appealing to those perhaps less dedicated to the cause. And on the other hand is for those not swayed by the promise, there is the threat. Rhodes, I think, can attest to this. The Concordat will burn worlds. Those who are in the way of their grand purpose are not left to stand idly by.
I have two questions. One, I know that there's a number of different cults, within the Concordat devoted to one cause or another, but I've never heard of this cult of the Lantern. What can you tell us about it?
I think they can tell you that the Cult of the Lantern is not a newer group, but like newer relatively, right? It is a part of the Concordat's movement to kind of make the prospect of conversion more appealing to the local populace, so that the answer is not immediately extermination every time, right?
So this is like the Concordat youth crew out here.
To an extent, yeah, right. Yeah, this is 100% like the
worship band.
Yeah, they are selling. They're selling the faith, right? And so the Cult of the Lantern. This may be a moment too to talk about how they got here, which is that like everyone from the Concordat that is on Ember right now has not been coming here in like drips and drabs. It's not been like a series of ships showing up over time. The Concordat has expeditionary legions, which is just like these enormous ships with like a smaller fleet of ships accompanying them that are just kind of moving on almost like a nomadic path through space. And so like everyone from the Concordat, more or less, that is on Ember right now are all members of the consecrated Lilac Expeditionary Legion, right? So they're like, in a very real sense, missionaries, right? Missionaries and crusaders all wrapped up in one. And so that is like the soldiers that are fighting this war, but it is also like the entire civilian operation of the Concordat is also just always in tow with this legion. And so the Cult of the Lantern is, and using cult here, in more of like a Greek mystery cult sense than like a modern cult kind of sense. The Cult of the Lantern is built-in apparatus for converting local populaces when this expeditionary legion lands in a place.
So Rhodes does have a pretty tumultuous history with the Concordat, going back to his past about a century ago. I guess the question to Troubadour is there top brass here? Like, would this be someone were to identify or be able to like see us, Rhodes in particular? Like, is that I don't know, like if this is like a relatively, backwater station hub here, or at this consecration ceremony, are there going to be, Concordat officials, like high officials? Or Intel have anything on attendees?
Let's gather information on this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of like pinging on like known squads or like Concordat operatives like seen in the area. Any kind of like armors notable? Anything the recon would have pulled up.
Yeah. And as a reminder, gathering information, especially in this case, is like a no risk roll. It's just a fortune roll to see how good information you get. So why don't we? What do you want to use to search for this information? Is this like studying the dossiers? Is this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what kind of access do we have? I mean, I'm thinking if is there like satellite images? Do we have these are just printouts on dossiers? Like,
I think you have satellite images. You have intelligence reports from the. I think Troubadour made reference to an embedded agent inside Farron's Bluff. I think you have access to their reports. And yeah, you have like extensive imagery of like the area of the town and sort of like sites around there.
okay, yeah, I guess I'm going to start with study, which I have nothing in. So that's rolling 1d or 2d and taking the lesser. Okay.
Yeah.
Damn, that's a 1.
So I think what that means, right, is like on a 1 you get like some information, not great information, not like extra. But I do think you still get information. So I think what you are able to ascertain, right, based on the reports, Farron's Bluff, like the propaganda operation here is important, as is the function of the comms array, but based on what the ring informant has been able to kind of like ascertain, having been embedded there for a while, other scout reports, it is a relatively minor installation compared to some of the other Concordat installations across the basin. And so this temple is also this temple to the faith is not an especially large or impressive one. It is like it has to be there, right? Because they have occupied this place. It's almost like a formality that, like, by deciding to continue occupying this place, like it's almost mandated that they build this kind of like site there. And so I think on a 1 that there is a cleric, kind of a priest of the faith, who is coming to do the consecration. But in the kind of like order of religious hierarchy, this is not a higher up per se. Like this is someone with some sway, some importance, but not like a very important figure in the overall sort of like power structure of the Legion.
And just in like plain old table talk here, when we say a cleric of the Concordat, I'm assuming that is a cleric with a armor of their own.
Not necessarily. No, I think this might just be like a priest, right? A religious figure, but not a religious. It's tricky because everyone in the Concordat is a religious figure in some ways, but this is like someone who is just operating on the faith side of things and not on the military aspect per se. Someone who is like ordained with religious power, but who is not
A bishop.
Yeah, I guess because bishops cover like a few churches, right?
Yeah, you have the parishioners, like the parish. Then you have like
archbishops,
bishops who are like, we take care of like these few dioceses. Then they respond to archbishop, and
So this is probably like in that sort of like
you can only move diagonally. Yeah.
Like this is like so this is probably like closer to like a bishop, in that they oversee kind of a few of these temples in the region. They will not be like permanently located in Farron's Bluff, but they are coming to do the consecration. And there is presumably a lesser religious figure who is like the kind of stationed priest. This is August Halcyon. That is the cleric coming to consecrate the temple. And maybe, if there is anyone else coming, it didn't show up in that gather information, right? Like that's like the data you have is just like that's the kind of the VIP who's showing up for this one.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, Carta, I think, just wants to spend some time studying, the surrounding mapped area. I mean, it's called the Bluff for a reason. Anytime you can get familiar with higher ground. I know that we have like secret maps and routes that kind of come with our squad. I think it's spending time to get familiar with it so that he feels that if things go wrong, like they tend to sometimes, he has a route down pat, or knows where he needs to get to cover, where to shoot from first, whatever our plan is once we get there, far more familiarity with the terrain that we're going into.
Do you want to, what do you want to roll to kind of gather that information?
I It's going to be study as well. Or, I mean, survey, but we're not really there in person. Would that still be considered surveying? Observe your surroundings, predict outcomes. You may spot trouble before it happens. You might discover an attacker's vulnerabilities. You could diagnose what destroyed a vehicle, but engineer might be better.
Yeah, I think like looking through the maps and such, like in kind of like a big picture plan, that does kind of sound like more like study.
Yeah, it's a
But
study.
you also have
no
points in.
No.
That's all right. We're a squad of action. Once we get there in the
heat,
on
the streets. There's no school. I can't just go around studying. Okay, well then I'm just rolling
2d6, taking the lowest result.
2d6. Ooh, a 4. 6 and a 4.
Yeah, 6. Yeah, well, it could have been a 6.
It could have been a 6, but
rolling 0 dice, you were taking a 4 instead. 4 or 5 provides standard information, and so I would say we can take a look together at this map.
You can read the map.
If you go back to Miro, our little weird tabletop thing, a little higher up there is this map, right? That we'll probably also post. But just to kind of go over, Farron's Bluff is this like kind of mid-sized town that is, as its name sort of suggests, is kind of like built kind of right next to, leading into like a bluff, like a big ridge line. So standard information, like, just like, I'm just going to shout out some of like the most important details. And I would say, like, if you have like a question you want to ask or something specific you want to know here, like if it's within the realm of standard information, I'm happy to like answer that. We're just kind of going over big picture stuff. Like I said, it's kind of mid-sized town. It is to the west of Coronatus. And so like kind of the surrounding terrain of Coronatus is not full on, like sand dune desert. It is more like, I think like American Southwest, a lot of like scrubland, like mesas and
sage seas.
Chaparral.
Not as quite as like densely populated with like vegetation as like the Chaparral might be, but like there's still like plant life, but it's a little barren. However, as you move further west, it kind of turns into like a kind of the foothills of this mountain ridge to the north. There's like a little bit more greenery, and that is kind of where the bluff is at, right? It's getting a little bit more of like a grass, like kind of like a hilly grassland as you get to this western portion. And this town has been built, like I said, kind of at the base of this bluff. The new temple is being built like smack dab in the center of town. And you can tell by the map that kind of on the southeastern quarter of town, there is a garrison that has been put into place. And I think, collating like your records that you had previously with like these maps, that this used to be a manor, like a big kind of like gated manor for a wealthy inhabitant of the town that was then taken over and converted into a garrison. But the actual bluff itself is to the north of the town, and it's this kind of ridge line. I think there is also like a small stream coming down from the mountains that kind of like runs under the bluff, like right along its edges. But as this hill kind of like gradiates up, right at the top of this bluff, kind of a distance from town, maybe a photograph so you can get a sense of this, but like from town, you can look up and you can see kind of looking over the whole town on the hill is Passerine Station, this facility, which is like a couple of buildings, including this big broadcast tower, which I have like in my head, a big classic kind of like satellite dish kind of thing, right? So Passerine Station is like kind of on the top of this bluff, up against the cliff. And so the approach from the north, there's like a bunch of like these rolling hills kind of heading up into the mountains north of it. And then a stream running right along it, and then just like a sheer cliff face. And so I think that tells you right there that to like approach from the north would mean having to scale that cliff face.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a sick radar dish.
Yeah, I just threw it's from Montauk on the end of Long Island, like their weird satellite station there where the Philadelphia projects are supposedly attached to.
So imagine that, but like really scaled up, right? Huge in size. Any approach from the north is going to run into like this cliff face. It's protected from any northern approach by the fact that it's like on the top edge of a huge cliff, like a 200 or 300 foot fall down into like kind of a small river beneath it.
Okay.
And then any approach from the south kind of runs the problem of, the town is right there. And so I think, you get that kind of sense, right? And like to the east, I think it is like mostly this kind of like scrubland, occasional hills, like buttes and mesas. But it does kind of put you in an interesting position where if you wanted to approach with stealth, it would mean either kind of evading notice by any of these locals, or like I said, kind of dealing with facing this cliff face. And like I said, Tim, I don't know if there's like questions that you have that I'm not answered here. I'm happy to
No, but there's not like, we don't see any railroads, or there's not like a...
I'd say there's probably a rail line coming in. There's like this like red road leading out and to the right. I was happy to say that maybe that is a rail line that then continues and wraps around to head up around the bluff and then eventually head north towards the mountains, right? Or actually probably, it heads out northeast and then there's like a junction somewhere up in the northeast, and one junction will head up towards the mountains and another one will head towards Coronatus is probably what it does. So I would say that, that is let's call that a rail line. I'll put a little text box here just so I remember.
Cool. Just thinking of whether we wanted to see if we could... It wouldn't be a ring-controlled line, though, would it?
No, this would 100% be coming into the town Concordat controlled for sure.
Okay.
And I would say this other road, though, that's leading up to the station, up to Passerine Station, that is a road, and it is kind of like climbing up this hill. And I would say it's not marked on here right now, but on standard information, I'll give you that there is a security checkpoint on this road. You can kind of see like the small building and like the gates on the road there. So there's like a checkpoint kind of leading up to the station to prevent people from being able to just drive up the one. Then this is like the one road that leads up to it too, let's say. But I think that's probably, like I said, happy to answer other questions on like standard, but I think that is about what you're able to gather studying these maps. And you have now, just as like a thing to rely on going forward, right? I would say Carta has like a pretty good working knowledge of the layout of the town and like the surrounding environment.
Okay. Also, do we know anything about these people who were kicked out of the manor to turn that into a garrison? People who lived in a big manor, people like that don't like to lose their...
I think like I said before, this was like a previously independent town, right? That kind of made its way by being a hub, treasure hunters and scavengers and folks heading out into kind of the outer dust to this like region surrounding the basin where there are plenty of first era artifacts to be unearthed. I think the people who lived in this manor were probably the people who founded this town or their descendants, people who realized if people want to throw their lives away trying to strike gold, strike orichalcum out in the dust, I can make a pretty penny off of providing them a place to do that.
Okay.
You keep mentioning treasure in this area. Is there anything notable, first era wise, coming out of the ground over here?
Not in Farron's Bluff, but yeah, I think the bleached plain and then the outer dust beyond, right, are, we've talked about this briefly, but the rest of Imber that is not the basin, right, is covered in this these raging sandstorms. It is inhospitable to life, but it's also filled with ruins. And these ruins have all kinds of first era artifacts in them. I imagine there are, if you're willing to go out far enough, we might even see hulking shipwrecks half sticking out of the sand. And I think the bleached plain, as an encroachment of this desert into the basin, it has some of that in it too. It's also dangerous as hell to go into, just environmentally and then also fundamentally. I think the fundament makes strange things happen in the bleached plain. It is not safe to just kind of venture into, but also the reward to be reaped if you can get out with something worth it. The people here who weren't prospecting for orichalcum were doing that instead, right?
Yeah, but it's not a, I don't know, weapon graveyard kind of thing, or there's no kind of known reason of stuff buried here that the Concordat would obviously be interested in.
The town itself, I would say I'll just give you a no, but the bleached plain, the outer dust, closer to the west, right? Yeah, and this again, the comms array here, that we know that they're using that to facilitate their venturing into those areas. It's just that right now, Troubadour and Ring Intelligence believe they are doing that to mount an assault on the Ring's territories. But who knows?
Malcolm, what about you? You got anything?
I was going to try and see if I could talk to somebody who at least used to live there and maybe knows the more intimate geographical details of this area. Or at least maybe somebody who knows, I don't know, what is the sort of microculture like here? I don't know, just anybody who can give me any sort of useful tips about something on a closer, smaller scale.
You're asking for a vibe check.
Not a vibe check, sure, but from someone in particular who's lived there or has been there recently, at least.
Sure.
Sounds like consort.
Yeah, how are you finding this person? Is this someone that you're talking to in Coronatus, or is this
Yes.
like, okay, so you're like kind of like putting the word out in Coronatus, like,
Mhm.
hey, can somebody put me in touch with someone who's okay? When we talked about like you work at the bar, you probably have social networks through there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, consort sounds probably about right to me for something like that.
Okay, I'm ready to roll. I have 0 dice in that.
Oh, cool. Well prepared for this one.
All of
Yeah.
us firing on all cylinders.
Hey, we're still learning. All right, here we go. 3.
3 and a 5, yeah, but we take the 3. Give me 1 second here to think about who this person might be. So this is okay. I think, through your context, you put the word out, and there's a junk seller named Calyx who operates out of Wormtown, which is this kind of area of Coronatus we haven't been to yet that is like kind of like a little bit of like a shanty town that has been built outside the walls of the city proper. It is a place where a lot of refugees from the war have kind of started to settling over the past few years. And it is like kind of a little bit of like a lawless place. The civil security of Coronatus doesn't come out into Wormtown too often unless it's like for like a very specific and probably usually violent purpose. But yeah, I think, one of the regulars at the bar is able to point you towards this junk seller named Calyx, who is, I imagine like at a stall, right? Like kind of hung up with just like rusted looking different like old machines, like busted up data pads in kind of like an open air market somewhere inside Wormtown. What does this approach look like? It doesn't have to be a full conversation, but like a little flavor of like, what are the kinds of questions that Des has for this person?
Is he just going in cold? Or does this person know? No, just like going like, hey, how you doing? Nice junk here. So
I think on a 3, yeah, I think on a 3, you're coming in cold, right? Limited information.
What kind of stuff you got?
What kind of stuff you got here? Yeah, well, it's real nice. Yeah. So listen, I heard you were just
Hey, listen, hey, don't touch. Are you buying or not? I got.
Oh yeah, good time. I'm taking a look around. Hey, I was just wondering.
If someone said that in a store, good time. I'm just looking around. Like, what?
I meant like all in good time.
Good time. I'm looking around.
Look and don't pay the bills now.
Say,
I got to make rent on this stall.
Yeah, I know. Hey, we're all gonna pay rent, am I right? And not me. I don't have to pay rent, but I mean, you do. Where? I heard. You were out at the bluff recently. Is that true?
Yep.
Wow, crazy stuff going on over there, huh?
Yeah, pretty wild.
The Concordat is pretty scary, huh?
Yeah, they're pretty frightening. Gotta be honest with you. Maybe move all the way out here.
Yeah. I heard,
were you looking for like capacitors? I got data pads.
Yeah. Let me see what you got. Can you pull some back? So, do you have any idea about like troop movement in that area, or sort of like weaknesses and maybe the security systems it might have around like the I don't know, the broadcasting array?
It's real funny watching somebody get chatty on a 3.
Yeah. I like we said we weren't going to have a whole conversation.
Troop movements or secrets relating to the broadcast, right? Like in the middle of pulling out like a big pile of like broken circuit boards, I think like looks at you and realizes this is not going to be a sale.
What if I bought something just to sweeten the deal?
Yeah, it's still a 3. What would he give you, right? You think these guys would come in and it's not all a show of force. It's letting you know that they're watching even when they're not there. They got this drone comes up, circles around the whole town a few times a day. Big, bright, white as bone, can't miss it. Lets you know they know.
Yeah, I hear that. Hey, it's hard enough, without a big white metal bird looking down at you every day. I understand that 100% completely. All right, well, thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I just didn't. I never really got into the sneaking in to critically undermine like a secure communications facility line of business. I mostly just sell junk.
Oh, me neither. I know. I don't do that either. Could you imagine? Oh my God! All right, have a good day, sir.
Fool, like a suicide wish to try that. It'd be.
I know.
Good time.
All right, see you later.
And that's Calyx, the junk merchant. In case anybody wants to go visit him again.
Going to the thrift store to ask if they've heard about troop movement.
You didn't happen to see what kind of like passwords they might be putting into any of their like gates, numbers, any?
Just to restate, there is a drone, like a large, maybe armed drone that makes kind of regular patrols around the area every day as kind of like a show of force, but also presumably to do some actually patrolling. So yeah, I'm happy to continue doing some gathering information. I think there's plenty of stuff we could still figure out, but I do also want us to start turning our minds towards a little bit of what approach we might want to take to doing this mission, so that we can start kind of formulating what our engagement role is going to look like.
I've got one more.
What do you got, Rhodes?
Yeah, well, I know it's the storm season here in Coronatus, and back 50 years or so ago, when Rhodes kind of first landed here on Ember, was kind of laying low with the drovers here. And I know that storm season is going to be driving the Great Horned Triop migration out into the dust. And I think it's a little premature before they really start. So I thought I might ask around kind of some of these drover bars, see if there's anybody around who might have seen any herds heading that way. Just as I got a plan. I just wanted to see kind of if there's any kind of, migration in the area. I mostly just want to catch up with an old friend.
Sure. Do you have like a person in mind here already, like a name or anything?
I do. I'm looking for Utah Alexander.
Utah Alexander. And so I don't know. Have we talked about drovers on the pod? You and I have talked about them a lot because they're like part of your backstory. But like drovers are this kind of like nomadic group of shepherds who have been on Ember for centuries, if not longer, and who herd you said like the great horned triops, these kind of giant. Well, a triops is like a weird shrimp.
Like a crustacean, but they're like, we've talked a lot about Ember being something like a dry seabed, kind of converted. So I think a lot of the wildlife out in the dust looks a lot like things you'd see on the bottom of the ocean, but kind of scaled up to like megafauna size. So that, you can think of the triop like kind of like a sea monkey, sort of, but, big kind of, I'm imagining them sort of buffalo-sized, iridescent shell with like longhorn steer horns on the front. And, once I think long ago, they were plentiful across the plains and barren wastes of Ember. They, I think, were probably hunted quite a bit as the Commonwealth kind of spun up here. But they're still around, and I think the drovers are still around. But the culture's changed quite a bit, but Rhodes still has like a couple of people, some old heads who are still in those circles.
Including Utah Alexander. Do you have like a look in mind for Utah or like any kind of like...
Yeah, I think like Utah would be... The image that jumps to mind is like in Cowboy Bebop, there's like those three old guys that show up like again and again, talk about like settling the area. So they're like, I think he's got like a tan skin, like dark, leathery almost from being in the sun all the time. I imagine kind of like probably like a bullet bandolier across the front, and is sort of like decorated in like little pieces of like, it almost looks like abalone shell, like an iridescent color, probably like hanging off of this bandolier. Like I imagine kind of like Bedouin cowboy sort of vibe.
Maybe like an actual like horn of the triops, like hollowed out into like a horn, like on a hip or something.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like a drinking horn for sure.
Yeah. So you meet him at like, there's like a drover bar, or a bar where at least where the drovers are known to congregate somewhere in Coronatus.
Yeah. There is, I think, like on the outskirts of town, probably not like on the Meridian side of things, but near the edges of like the Shade District. I think towards the edge of Coronatus, there's probably like going west there. There's like a
There's like small like outcroppings of settlements outside the wall. Maybe there's one there. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like this is probably maybe where the drovers also are known to like. Those who are still taking to the trail, like, when they come through near the city, like maybe this is like the region where they would like post up.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty old bar. I'm imagining like more or less a saloon.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously.
I think it's probably called like the Old Frontier, something like that.
I imagine there is like a robot. I say like robot here to imply like also like a maybe a lesser level of sentience than what Rhodes has, right? In I think like a server's apron that is like I'm imagining it's like on like a one-legged stand with wheels at the bottom, and it's like shuffling a broom across the floor. But there's just like so much sand and dust coming in, like it's truly caught in like a futile loop.
Forever dusting. Yeah, so push open those front doors. Imagine it's like your typical Western fare. Card game in the corner, couple of like pretty salty characters at the bar, looking around, and I think there's probably like back end of the bar towards the wall. You can probably see Utah, bent over the counter there,
nursing a drink. Looks up, on Rhodes, you old dog.
Utah, you're still alive?
Hardly.
Yeah, you look like it.
Come, have a sit. Palaver a little.
This one's on me, and I think Rhodes pulls out, I don't know, like, I guess, I don't know if we have money from the ring.
We talk about what money is. I like the idea there's physical money.
What did we say it was? Drachma? Or we had like a coin here, right?
That was like, I think, a Greek coin we were talking about possibly for the Commonwealth. I do like the idea of paper money, though. I think like the texture of paper money is like something I like.
Yeah, so it pulls out like we're sticking with Western, they're like big bills. We're like, they're not like, hundreds, they're just like large pieces of paper.
Just very large, yeah.
Pulls out like a wad of those, which are probably actually, I'll say, from Rhodes' time before really falling in with the ring against, it's like, probably like 50-year-old money. Puts a crumpled wad down on the counter. He's like, God, what's it been, Utah? 10, 15 years?
I wouldn't tell it by looking at you.
Yeah, well, I've managed to stay busy, but getting busier all the time. Listen, I hate to call on a social occasion like this, but I actually need a favor.
Usually the way this kind of thing goes.
Yeah, I reckon so. Listen, I'm planning a bit of an expedition, got pulled into a job. You know how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Heading west, out to the edge of the dust. Not going to get into details. I'm sure you understand. This is just
rather you didn't.
Policy. Heading towards the Bleached Plain, but I'm wondering, could you get your hands on a migration map? I'm just wondering what's changed in the routes. It's been a while since I've been on the back of a tryout.
I think this is maybe the appropriate moment to roll here to see the quality of information you get from this one.
Okay. Fuck, I really don't have any good rolls for like anything other than like fighting.
And that's also maybe kind of like the moral message of Beam-Saber.
We can't just fight. I guess this is probably like a consort.
Very much like consort to me.
Yep. Which I also don't have anything in.
You could. I'll say it. You probably shouldn't. But it's up to you. You could push yourself on this.
That's such a bad idea.
I mean, you got a little stress to play with, but
So if I push, that's 2 stress.
It is 2 stress for an extra dice.
And declaring a contact doesn't give me anything in this, right? Like an old friend kind of thing?
No, it's like the fictional opportunity to get the information that way. And there is like a set of rules for like declaring contacts, but we're not going to like worry about it too much here because I think this is like pretty low key.
Yep. Okay. All right, I'll push.
You're going to push for it? All right.
That's 2 stress.
That is 2 stress. Or you could roll 2 dice and just take the worst result.
I just don't. I already have some stress. I don't think I'm going to push it.
That's okay. It's a hard calculus.
So yeah, I'll just roll 2d6 and take the lesser here.
Again, you're still going to get information no matter what. Just quality information is what we're figuring out.
That's a 4? Oh, no, it's a 1.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's a 4 and a 1. So that is a 1 on this one. So I think...
You've insulted him by buying him a well drink instead of an old friend getting him something off the shelves.
Well, I think what it is I think Utah, I got gored a couple years back I think, pats like a thigh that you can see that he's actually kept his leg out straight. It's not bent, right? Like and there's maybe like kind of like a brace on it.
Mm-hmm.
Utah hasn't been out on the range for the last few years. It's mostly living the city life now, and sounds real miserable to admit that. But what it does mean is that Utah's maps, this is the thing. He's very willing to show them to you. They're not quite up to date, and on top of that, I think Utah would tell you, between everything that the Commonwealth's been doing, the drilling, the blocking of the routes, the rerouting of the triops, and then whatever those god botherers out west are getting up to, weather's gotten a little less predictable. The migrations are a little less a routine than they would have been even a few years ago. Feels like the whole thing's kind of breaking down.
That's exactly my problem. Between you and me, I'd like to see something change there.
I think you see like a little glint of fire in this old man's eyes. I think we're all looking for a change, friend.
Well, that's the Utah I remembered.
You're looking for information about like these migrations and about storm patterns and such, right?
I'm looking for the movement of the triops bit, and I mean, like, I'm sure we can survey, see them out on the horizon, but I'm curious if, like, there's a train heading that way. What like to expect? Because Rhodes has kind of been out of the drover circle or the circuit for a long time. I don't even know what average herds are like these days, but I think the kind of experience in them is probably saying like it's a pretty good chance they're out there.
Based on the maps, you can tell that there's a pretty good chance that there should be a herd in proximity, at least, to Farron's Bluff around this time of year. However, I think like limited information. I don't think that I don't think you have like a contact for who might be kind of like heading that drive right now. There probably is one going to be out there, but it's not necessarily maybe someone that you used to run with or someone that you know personally, or that Utah has like kind of foreknowledge of. And then I think, the only other thing here is that, weather patterns have gotten a little less predictable. It's harder to know, if and when storms are going to come blowing off the bleach plain than it used to be.
So, all right, that works for me. And we don't have enough to acquire an asset right now, right?
You do not have any. Unfortunately, you have no supply points right now.
Okay, that's good enough for me now. I think, I think Rhodes and Utah finish their drink up, probably catch up on some old times. How's the missus? Tell me about getting gored. We can fast forward through some of that.
Yeah. You spend a little time, drinking and catching up before you have to kind of get your gear together to start making the journey west.
Yeah, and I think, we dip out of there, and I think on the way out, Rhodes, turn back and be like, Utah, I think we ought to make this more of a regular occasion.
Tips the hat to you, nods in agreement. All right. Is there any other information gathering folks have in mind, or do we want to start talking about where and how we want to approach this job?
I don't know. I don't think I have anything crazy in mind.
Can we drop in from the sky, perhaps?
I don't know that I don't think.
I feel like we'd get shot down or something.
Can we burrow from underneath the earth, perhaps?
I think that those would both be valid approaches. If you had the asset to make it happen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think because you are lacking, you're low on supplies right now. You don't have a lot of official support. I don't think that for this job that is a thing we've established that you could make happen yet.
Have we even talked about what airplanes look like? Do we have airplanes?
We have not talked about aerial stuff much at all. I think that there are aerial vehicles, but I imagine, one, that it's hard to fly at most altitudes on Ember because of the kind of violent sandstorms and kind of just a generally turbulent atmosphere. So I think that most flying that happens is lower altitude. But I also think technologically, it's just not the dominant mode here. Whether that's just because that's not the kind of machine that has been found as often, but also I'm just not very interested in airplanes personally. But I'm open to. They're thinking right that the air traffic happens in some fashion, for sure. But I don't think that there's a ton of it, relatively speaking.
So what's your real question here? How we're getting in?
Yeah.
As it relates to an engagement role?
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm willing to kind of hand wave the exactitudes of it, but I think it is probably on foot or like in your vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be catching trains that way if you want to do this mission entirely on a pilot scale. There are still like train lines that could take you to like independent areas closer to there that would then get you close enough to come in on foot.
Can I ask another information gathering thing before we like segue as this informs it? Are they shipping any like what is the temple built out of? Are they shipping material in?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, there's
Well, it's made out of marble.
yeah, it's made out of
no marble.
It is probably made out of like materials brought from off planet that are being shipped from like the Concordat's central like kind of settlements that are all up in the mountains.
Because I wonder if we could like hide the mechs on a freight train and like basically like be hidden cargo like on the way into Farron's Bluff or whatever, and that's like our point of entry.
But if that's their like cargo and they're controlling that,
yeah, I guess that's kind of dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that's a valid approach. Yeah. Depending on where you get off the train, it might just put you off the train in the middle of town in your mechs, which could be
potentially sick, but also pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Engagement roll.
So, yeah, unless, if folks have more gathering information, I'm open to doing that. You can also always we can gather information, of course, during missions too. We can flash back to like doing kind of activities like that as well. But I think the thing we should probably start honing in on, unless there's like a specific gathering information question anyone has, is what your approach to this job looks like. And what that will be for us is like what the engagement role is going to be. We're just looking for the kind of the general tactic, right? I don't need to know your full plan for every stage of the mission, but I do need to know there are the 6 tactics. We've covered them before, but it's assault, deception, science, social, stealth, or transport. And we need the detail that each one has associated with it. So which one of those is kind of like jumping out to you? And we can kind of figure out the details and what that looks like for this engagement role.
Stealth or assault? I mean, I feel like we're not going in like assault, but
I had like an idea here with the triops, but I can't I can't acquire an asset. But I had originally thought maybe this would be like a 2-pronged thing on like a deception roll, where if I got into town and planted something like a microsonic device that would like mimic, some sort of call, we could get like a stampede to run through this ceremony, the consecration, and cause all this chaos while you guys run to this. So if it's like, my mech has something that can emit this microsonic frequency, make the triops like pour through town, cause this kind of big distraction. And, you guys are off on your trying to like, get this spike installed or at least disable the station. That's one way, but I don't think I can do that without acquiring an asset. Because
we have our guy there. What happens if we had him do some kind of, he plants our connection, the ring dude there set up something while we arrive.
I mean, if you have your mech, if we wanted to say that you're using your mech to do that somehow,
yeah,
that's like very fun to me, right? That's a wacky, fun, wild thing to do.
Yeah. So I do have the advanced prototype move, which would let me declare an experimental piece of vehicular gear. So, my thought there is, I could say that this is something that the Redshift could do and like try and cause this distraction. I'm also like kind of being out here in the mech, like causing something here. Also because like Rhodes has a bit of a bone to pick with the Concordat. Like, it's been a long time since he's like been in the fray with the Concordat. Like they effectively like destroyed his like home planet, glassed the city where he like grew up in, or it was like created in, right? I suppose rather. So that's an option. I'm putting it out there as a potential plan.
So I think if you were doing the thing that you just described, causing a stampede by like emitting a particular frequency from the mech to like enrage the nearby triops, that sounds like a scientific plan to me, which I've never done in a game of Beam Saber before, so that is kind of fun. Right? That scientific is engaging with technological power. The detail is the unusual procedures used.
Yeah. I also kind of like it because it's sort of like nature versus industry kind of thing happening.
I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not against that. Is that? I mean, how does that sound to you guys, or is there something else that's like?
That's really fun. I fucking love science.
Michael, you're putting your mech into the middle of town?
Well, I'd be in it, and yes, I'm imagining this kind of being like I don't really have a lot of stealth, but like getting in to town, like I guess somewhere near where this is happening.
You're doing this on the day of my temple's consecration? I'm just saying, I love the idea of the stampede. I just also think about what it means to have a mech coming into a town being like, I'm just here for the fucking festivities.
I was gonna say maybe it doesn't have to be in the mech, but I'm already like kind of beat up, so if I don't have the mech, I'm gonna be really vulnerable.
I mean, there's a version of this where to be. I'm being a very generous DM, but right, like if the triops are already on the outside of town.
Oh, we drive them because I think Rhodes
that's another move.
has experience in like driving a herd.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also an option.
Yes.
And I think that I could still leverage the same piece of experimental stuff here. And I kind of like the idea of, driving like a herd into town. Yeah.
Is this the plan? Is this the plan? Is this the plan that Rhodes drives a herd of triops through the ceremony to disrupt proceedings and distract everyone while the squad moves in on the station?
Yeah.
It sounds fun, so I think we should do
it. Yeah.
Before we...
It's on brand. Yeah.
Before we start, it's actually, I believe the squad reputation is daring, and this sounds daring as shit. I fucking love games because I have spent most of like a week and a half prepping this mission, thinking about... I've created this little intricate setup for like a stealth. There's like a cliff face you could be. There's all kinds of fun little bits and bobs I got hidden in this one.
Oh, see, that's what I wanted to do.
I mean, if we're having someone distracted,
I mean, you could still climb up the cliff face, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I think, yeah.
But in my mental model of all the things that my beautiful boys could have done to approach this one, at no point was I like, yeah, what if they did like a stampede of giant crustaceans through the middle of town during a religious ceremony? And that's games, baby. I love it. That shit's wild. Okay, let's do the engagement roll.
Okay.
It's getting a little late here on the East Coast. So let's do this, and then we can resume our next session with this wild fucking plan. Let me remember how the rules of the game work. Okay, so after planning the mission, we jump right into the action to see where we see the squad encounter their first obstacle. We make an engagement roll to see how severe the situation is when the squad gets into it. The engagement roll dice pool starts with 1 dice for plain old luck. We add additional dice for major advantages, remove dice for disadvantages. So we're just going to go down this list and answer some of these questions. And then we will roll dice to see what position you start this mission off in. So, like I said, 1 dice for plain luck. And then the first question that we ask is the mission bold?
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels bold to me. Take +1 dice. So we're at 2 now. Is the mission especially complex?
Not really.
No, I guess it's pretty straightforward what you're trying, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we're at 2 dice so far. This is so dumb. I love it. Does the mission exploit the target's vulnerabilities?
I think so. They're not going to see this coming. They're completely focused on their own creation here. They've completely looked past the natural world all around them.
That sounds convincing to me. Sure. Take +1 dice. That puts you at 3 dice. Is the mission's tactic ineffective against the target? I would say no, it is definitely effective, right? This is a wild thing to do. Is the squad receiving external support for the mission?
Maybe. Technically, we're getting support from the triops and their drovers.
Yeah, I guess we could call. Yeah, if we want to call it that way, I'm interested in the discussion. I guess
my thinking is there's probably a drover band here also working the herd. So yeah. Maybe this is like a faction play. Are the drovers a faction?
They're a squad. Yeah.
A squad? Then yes.
All right, so we'll say yeah. So that is +1. So that puts you at 4 dice. Is anyone interfering with the mission other than the target? That's a question I get to answer. I'll say no.
It's a loaded no.
Well, let's go. So let's answer the last question here. Are there other factors affecting the mission? Take +1 dice for each one that benefits the squad, and -1 dice if it hinders them. Factors might include differences in squad tier, specialized equipment, unusual terrain, and more, etc. And I would say that there is another factor affecting this mission. There is something going on here that you are maybe not aware of. And part of this is also squad tier. You are a lower tier than the culpable lantern and the other squads here. But I think those things combine. I think I'm going to remove 1 dice from your pool. But that does still leave you with 3 dice to get all together, right? Pete, I do kind of feel like you should roll this one since you're the one doing the rustling and the wrangling. And so remember, what this dice roll tells us is basically at the start of this mission, when we jump kind of in media res right into the action, are things going well for the squad or are they going poorly? Is the situation controlled or is it desperate or is it just risky?
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead and roll 3d6 and we will...
Troubadour is going to hate this, but...
It is... yeah, it's different than what I think they were thinking.
All right. 3d6. Come on, baby. That's a 5.
All right.
That's a 5. So this means that, appropriately enough, the starting position for this mission is risky. And so, maybe we can close this episode. When we start the next episode, we're going to do this mission. We'll start right off kind of jumping into the action with the results of this engagement roll. But I think maybe this episode closes on like the crew, in the low tower. Like we're in the hangars, maybe like preparing the armors, putting together like your bags and like your gear, kind of piling everything in together and figuring out like what you need to bring for the next week and a half of journeying or whatever. And so maybe we get that shot of everyone together in the hangar, preparing for what's to come. I guess we don't get the scene where Rhodes explains to everyone his wild plan. We'll assume that happens off screen. And yeah, so when we return to this game, we will be leading a stampede of giant horn triops into the middle of a temple dedication. Tune in here to find more exciting action like that here on Risky Standard. Also, I think that they should rate us 5 stars on iTunes.
I think so.
I think we deserve it.
I think that seems fair. I
think we're supposed to ask people to do that. I don't really understand the metrics of it, but if you've gotten this far,
if you've made it this far, please rate 5 stars. Tell your friends.
RiskyStandardPod@gmail.com, probably. I don't have a good closing tagline for episodes yet, so I'm also taking submissions for those. Send them in.